Alright, what's up guys? I'm finally back with another video. I'm done with finals, I'm on Christmas break, so I'm going to start trying to pump out some Jeep and BMW videos the best I can. So for today's video, I'm going to be giving a 30,000 mile review on my Milestar Patagonia mud tires. Before we get started, I'm just going to mention that I'm not affiliated with Milestar whatsoever. So these tires I bought completely on my own, and I ran all 30,000 miles on my own with them as well. So this is going to be unbiased, just a regular user review. I'm gonna kind of go over some of the pros, some of the cons, talk about whether I would run the tire again, and maybe it'll help you get a better understanding of if these tires are right for you. So hopefully that I'm able to give a good enough explanation of how these tires perform and help you make a better choice for what tires you're gonna buy next. So let's get started off with some of the pros of these tires. All right, so pro number one. The tires are pretty cheap. They're not very expensive at all for a mud tire. I got a set of 5 38-inch tires for about $1,400 shipped to my door. So that's pretty good if you ask me. I don't know any other mud tires that you can get for that cheap, but simple as that. I mean, if you're looking to save a couple $100 right off the bat on a set of tires, maybe you just bought some beadlocks or expensive wheels and you don't have that much left for the tires, then maybe this is good for you because it's a pretty inexpensive mud tire and it'll get the job done. So the second pro for this tire is that it is a pretty quiet tire on road. I've driven a lot of those miles on highway of my 30,000 miles. I mean, it is my daily driver. I've done long distance, I've done, short daily commutes. I wouldn't say it's the most comfortable highway tire, but it's pretty quiet for a mud tire. All right, so the next pro about these tires is that for me, based on my experience, they drove pretty well on highway. There was not a difficulties with balancing. The shop just lined up the dot onto the valve stem and they've been perfectly balanced. I haven't had any issues of pulling one way or the other. I will mention I run them pretty low on air pressure. I run them around 28 PSI cold on the highway. So it usually warms up to about like 29 or 30. They're pretty comfortable on the highway. They're pretty stiff. These tires that I have are a load range C, so they're softer plywall, and especially with a little lower air pressure, they run pretty good on the highway. They absorb bumps fairly well. They have good traction. I take turns at regular highway speeds and no issue with feeling like you're gonna break the rear end loose or anything like that. It's completely stable and planted. It's a pretty good compound for the highway, I would say, given that it's a mud terrain. So no issues with the way that it handles on highway. It's pretty good on highway. The only thing I will mention that it is a pretty quiet mud terrain, but it's not as quiet as I feel like a lot of people hyped it up to be. So many people on social media, like the Facebook groups or other YouTube channels, they just kind of like praise this tire for being the quietest mud tire or a hybrid mud tire. And while yes, it does drive pretty good on highway, it's not as quiet as I had hoped it to be. I was kind of expecting it to be as quiet as the all-terrain, but kind of have the tread of a mud terrain, which maybe I was wrong for thinking that, but you can't have both. You always got to give and take. So it's pretty quiet, just not as quiet as everyone hypes it up to be, in my opinion. So just keep that in mind, that if it is a mud tire, it's still going to have a certain level of volume to it. So don't be deceived the way I was, and just keep that in mind. It's one thing to consider. All right, so the next pro about this tire, which is one of the main reasons I actually got this tire, is that it is pretty light. It's one of the lightest mud terrains, if not the lightest mud terrain in this size. For a 38 by 13.5 size tire, these tires are just shy of 80 pounds, which is really impressive. Most mud terrains that are in the same size or even a little bit smaller, like a 37-inch, are running around 90 pounds or higher. So that's a pretty light tire, which is a huge benefit to everything. I mean, it's less unsprung mass, which means that your acceleration is going to be better, your stopping time is going to be better. It's less wear and tear on all of your joints and components. It's going to steer easier. The lighter the tire, the better for most applications. So especially if you're running a setup kind of like mine where you got a heavier wheel, like a beadlock, then having a lighter tire is going to help kind of balance out that extra weight from the rim. So that's one thing to consider. If you just need a lighter tire, maybe you don't have your axles upgraded the way you want it yet, or you're putting a very large wheel, like maybe you're going to 40s on stock Dana 44s, something like that. Whatever the reason may be, and you need a light tire, then this is going to be the tire to go to. It's very light for a mud tire, and I would say that you can't beat it in terms of weight. The last pro that I have is the sizes that this tire is available in. I know a lot of people run them all the way from the standard 35 by 12.5 all the way up to a 40-inch tire, and I believe there's rumors that it comes out in a 42-inch tire soon. So I'm not sure how true that is. We'll have to wait and find out. But my favorite part is that not only does it come in a regular 37 by 12.5, but you can also get it in a 38 by 13.5, which is what I have. And in my opinion, that's such a sweet spot tire for the JL Rubicon platform, especially with the high fenders on the Rubicon. I think the 38s look perfect in this configuration. So I wish that more companies offered a 38 by 13.5 for a 17-inch rim. A lot of companies who have the 38s are more for a 20-inch rim or bigger, which I'm not trying to put deep dish wheels on my Jeep, so I like the 17-inch setup, and there's not many companies who offer a 38 for a 17-inch. That is one thing to consider, is that if you want to get that kind of sweet spot look where it's not quite as big as a 40 where you're killing everything, and it's not the generic 37 either, the 38 is a pretty good spot. And these tires measure fairly true to their size, so it's, I would say, 37.5 after you air it down and stuff, get it broken in a little bit. So it's a pretty accurate tire to its size, but I would say it does run a little bit smaller than what it's advertised as, so keep that in mind as well. So I mean, that's just something that is just a little pro. I think that you can get a more variety of sizes. It's always nice to have flexibility with, you know, the tire sizes, whether that be because of your fenders or your clearance or what size wheel you're running, whatever it may be. It's nice to have options. So I praise Milestar for putting out unique tire sizes and kind of going outside of the standard norm and putting out some stuff that, you know, the market doesn't have for other manufacturers. So I really like the 38 by 13.5 size, and it sucks that other brands don't have that, because I would run that size again if I were to get a different brand tire. All right, so now for the fun part, we get to chop on the tires a little bit and talk about the cons. I know that's probably why a lot of you guys are here, is you want to hear what's bad about the tire. You already probably know what's good about it. So I'm going to tell you what has disappointed me or left me wanting more after 30,000 miles with these tires. For my vehicle specifically, I would say the biggest downside of this tire is how freaking fast they wore out. Holy crap. I know they were cheaper to begin with, but if I'm replacing them so many times over and over, is it really cheaper? Because you could go for the same set of Nittos for the same size. They're going to last you almost twice as long as these have lasted. So I've rotated them every 5,000 miles, and I've been very, very explicit with that. I rotate as frequently as possible. I never miss it. Every 5,000 miles, give or take 100 miles, I have them rotated on the spot. And while I did tow a little bit with it, like I didn't tow anything crazy, just a couple jet skis here and there, but that's no excuse for how fast these tires wore out. I'm gonna kind of get a video for you of the spare tire, which is brand new, and compare it to the tires on the vehicle right now, and I'll use a quarter for reference. So you could see how much that these tires have worn out from just below 30,000 miles of use, which is not expected for a mud tire of this size. It's gotten a little bit louder on road with time, so that's one thing to consider too, is that after the first 5,000 miles, you're probably gonna start hearing it get a little bit louder too. So don't get spoiled with the very first impressions of how quiet it is. But also you're gonna lose tread, you're gonna wear out the corners of the lugs and whatnot, and they're just not gonna perform the same, especially on mud and rock. I found that it's still all right for most of the sand that I've been going on in Galveston area. I haven't had any issues with that, but in mud, it definitely hurt significantly. Like I could feel it sliding around more than it used to, which is, you know, fairly normal whenever a tire wears out. It's just the fact of how fast the tire wore out, which is worrying to me. So I would say that the life of the tire is probably its biggest downside, because it does perform good for that first 3,000 to 10,000 bracket. Like right when they're broken in, all the way up to the 10,000 mile point, they were pretty good tires. I can't complain. I mean, I didn't have any issues with traction. I didn't have any issues with the noise. Didn't have any issues with the handling. And of course, the price was good, so I was happy with them. So for the first 10,000 miles, I was a happy camper. And then after 10,000 is where I started to see it kind of a decline for the performance. So I would say that it's still not a bad tire when it's worn out. Like, it still gets the job done. It's just not as good as I would like it to for a mud tire. So I would say that a lot of tires that are competition to this tire would still be performing in a better state at this level of mileage, right around the 30,000 point. So in my opinion, that's the biggest downside for this tire, is how fast they wore out. Alright, so another little negative gripe that I have about this tire, which it might just be me. I know I'm being pretty nitpick about it, but it's something to consider. I know a lot of people buy mud tires for the aesthetic of the mud tire. They like the big blocky tread, meaty pattern. And for me personally, I don't think it's the best looking tire. I think it looks better than a lot of all-terrains, don't get me wrong. I just don't think that compared to a lot of the other mud tires that it competes with, I think it's probably the ugliest one in the lineup personally. I don't really like the way that the mud tire looks. Like I said, the main reason that I got this specific mud tire was because of the weight and the price. So if you want the coolest looking mud tire out there, this is not going to be like a Nitto mud grappler where it's got crazy claws and whatnot. So it's not going to be the coolest looking tire in the world, but I know some people totally don't care about that, and I might get bashed in the comments for caring about how a tire looks. You know, a lot of people might say, hey, the reason I'm buying a mud tire is for the performance. Just, you know, fine by me too. I mean, that's your tire, your vehicle. You buy it for whatever reason you want. But I'm just saying that one of the reasons that I buy a mud tire is also because I like the way that the tread of a mud tire looks. So for me personally, that was a weaker point for this tire, is that it's not the coolest looking mud tire. Like I said, the main reason I got it was because of the weight of this tire, because I didn't know how well that this Jeep would handle with this size wheel. So now that I know that it can handle that kind of mass and that diameter of wheel, I'm not as much concerned with the weight. But I'm glad I tested it out with a lighter tire to begin with, especially to break in the components, since I lifted it and threw the wheels right when they were brand new. I'd rather have a little bit lighter tire. It doesn't hurt to have a lighter tire. So I know I keep going back to the weight, but like I said, that's the main reason that I bought the tire. Sorry for the tangent, but anyways. All right, so for the final con that I have for this Milestar Patagonia tire, now that it's kind of gotten around the 30,000 mile point and I've been running on a lower pressure, like 28 PSI, I am noticing a little bit of a cupping wearing pattern for the tires. You can see that it's got like a little bit of a crown the way that it's been worn out. The middle is kind of a flat spot, and then the corners are bulging out a little bit. And so it's kind of getting that crown problem that a lot of people have talked about on the forums. It doesn't really affect the driving characteristics for my vehicle, at least. I didn't notice anything, but I did notice it got a little bit louder because of that. I guess because it's not driving as much on the center highway part of the tire, and it's kind of making more contact with the lugs now. I'm not sure what that may be, but I mean, the reason I ran it at 28 PSI was because it was a little bit stiff at the recommended 33 or 35, whatever it was. So, I mean, I don't regret running it at 28 PSI because that's what was necessary for a comfortable ride. But it is wearing out kind of in an unhealthy manner, if you will. So I would say that was my last complaint about this tire. I'm going to go through and just kind of add as many clips through this video as possible of showing the tread and showing some parts where the lugs are a little chunked off, or they're worn out, or maybe some spots where I've got little imperfections in the tire, so you can see how they've handled the 30,000 miles. Like I said, most of the 30,000 miles I've done have been between highway, mud, gravel, and rocks, like granite type of rock crawling, so, and sand as well. I didn't get to do any snow experience on these tires, as I'm from the south part of Texas, so I'm sorry if you wanted a snow review. Hopefully somebody else's videos can help you out with that. While these tires do still have a little bit of life left on them, as you'll see, they're on their way out for sure. So I'm just gonna, you know, call it short and switch tires. Now this is the final part of the video that I want to wrap it up with. Would I buy these tires again? For my daily driving Jeep, no, I would not buy these tires again. But I could see a reason down the road why I might want these tires. Maybe I have like a second Jeep that it's mainly going to be driven around locally, or I'm just going to drive it with the top off all the time and I just want a cheaper tire, a lighter tire, then yeah, maybe I would do something like that. So the next tire that I've got coming, which I just ordered this week, are 37 by 12.5 Nitto Ridge grapplers. And I've had that tire before on different vehicles, and I really like that tire, so I'm curious to see how it'll perform in a 37 on a Jeep. I've never had it on a Jeep, I've only had it on a truck. I got them in a load range D, so it should be pretty comparable to this. So I'm gonna put some miles on those tires. I might even do an install video of once I get those tires swapped on. And I've got a buddy, Roush, for all of y'all who know my buddy Roush. He's got some Cooper STT Pros coming on his rig soon. So maybe we could do a comparison with the different tires and talk about the pros and cons for each one. And to answer the final questions, I would not buy this tire again. However, I did not dislike the tire that much to the point where I would say I hate it. I would just say that it wore out faster than I liked it to. So that's probably the main reason I'm not going to buy it again. But I'm excited to put on those new Nitto Ridge grapplers. and maybe give you guys a review on that too. It's hard to kind of get an idea for a tire through a video. The best thing that you could do is if you have a buddy who's got a tire that you want to test, ask him to let you drive his rig or go for a ride in the rig and see how loud it is, how it performs. There's no better way to tell than to do it in person, but hopefully I was able to give enough details about my personal experience that you can make a choice whether you want these tires or not. So that wraps up the video. Like I said, I'm going to be putting out more videos now that I'm on Christmas break, and just let me know in the comments what your opinions are on these tires. What's your favorite tire? And if you have any ideas for another video, just comment below and let me know. So I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Hopefully it'll be a lift install on Roush's Jeep, so y'all stay tuned.